The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by EdgeBoost. Paying up for better, sign up today. Pepper code SGPN. And when you do end up signing up, you get a free Refs or Terrorists t-shirt. Claim your shirt at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/REFS. So once again, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/refs. We're also brought to you by NYR Bets. Get your $25 free bet for the Belmont by going to nyrbets.com/SGPN25, promo code SGPN25. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Wednesday afternoon, June 4th, around 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the preview of the women's semifinal matches taking place on Thursday. If you're not aware of the actual French Open schedule, the women's matches will be taking place on Thursday, and the men's semifinal matches will take place on Friday. So we'll break down the men's semifinal matches tomorrow. But of course, the Joker-Zverev match has not started yet. It starts in about an hour. So decided to get in the women's episode before that match began. Either way, before we get into any of the recap of the women's quarterfinals, a quick recap of what happened for the last episode for the lock and dog picks. Overall, ended up having a split. Did lose the lock, did win the dog. For the lock, did lose the parlay with the Joker and Zverev over 3.5 sets, with the Bublik Sinner no 6-0 set at -114. At the end of the day, the Sinner 6-0 was always a possibility, but DraftKings went rogue and put a -275 line up when it was -600 market wide. I was going to take that every time based on price differential, and we needed one game in the third set. Bublik had 4 game points on his own serve in the third set, lost them all, and ended up getting 6-0 in the final set, so picked up a loss there for the lock. Nice win, though, for the dog, as we ended up having Musetti to win the match against Tiafoe, and both players to win a set, as Musetti did win in 4. That was plus 134, so once again, a pretty good dog for us, so we'll try to keep that growing here on the women's side here for Thursday. Now, for the actual recap of the men's matches, I will do that in the next episode. I'm going to try to keep it pretty, I'd say, consistent, so the flow and the cohesion is there. I will break down the men's quarterfinal matches, recap those in the semifinal episode coming out tomorrow. But for the women's episode, I will recap the women's quarters and move on from there. So I'm going to separate the women's matches from the men's matches for the sake of, I'd say, consistency and for cohesion. Anyway, point is, before we get into any of the recap of the women's quarterfinal matches, a reminder that you can help support the show by liking and subscribing on YouTube. You also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So once again, you can help the show grow by liking and subscribing. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. Think we're at like 992, I think. So hopefully help us get to 1,000 by the end of the next episode. Hopefully you've been enjoying the show. And if you are new to the show, welcome. Hopefully you have been enjoying the content. Plus, a reminder, though, podcast available on audio-only platforms as well, like Spotify or Apple. So I do edit and post the podcast there too. But don't forget to leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple if you're listening to it in non-YouTube live stream format, so keep that in mind. Plus, a reminder, you can also check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great merchandise for the podcast. We have shirts, we have sweatshirts, we have mugs, a lot of content, very affordable, very comfortable. And also we have different content for different shows. For example, I have the MLB Gambling Podcast shirt on right now, show that I'm also on. I'll be on that later today. But check out the merch store for some great content, and once again, some very affordable content if you're looking for some shirts and I'd say other SGPN merchandise, etc. Plus, a reminder, we have a brand new contest going on for the Stanley Cup, because Stanley Cup Finals here, and the Hockey Gambling Podcast is giving away a free NHL jersey and a $200 gift card in SGPN gift cards format. So check out the actual contest. Enter for free at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Stanley Cup to enter the free contest. Time to move on to the actual recap of what happened in the women's quarterfinal matches that took place on Tuesday and Wednesday. Starting off with the matches that took place on Tuesday. So for this one, you had chalk for the most part. You had Sabalenka against Zhang. Fun matchup there. It was competitive, thought it would be, but Sabalenka got the job done as she won in straight sets. Went to a breaker, and then she ended up winning the second set 6-3. Zhang admitted after the match that the atmosphere and the, I'd say, stakes got to her a little bit, and she was definitely playing below her usual standard. Definitely true. Sabalenka is also really good, so not exactly a shock there. We did have Sabalenka to win the quarter and Zhang to win the quarter. So we were automatically going to win, but either way, Sabalenka to get the job done. But unfortunately, we had Zhang as an outright at around 21-1, and that went up in flames. Then you had Swiatek, who ended up beating Svitolina. You had one blowout set and then one competitive set, but Swiatek, once again, is in the French Open semis. What else is new? She's won 4 French Open titles, 3 in a row. We have her at 4-1, so not a shock there. People were concerned about her form. I could care less. She owns the courts here, and now she has a matchup against Sabalenka in the semis, which is going to be the match of the event most likely. But either way, point is definitely a nice showing by her. Moving on to the matches on Wednesday. Apologies for the short breakdown on Tuesday, but the favorites won. It was pretty straightforward. So nothing else to really add there. For the recap, though, the matches that happened earlier today, you saw Goff win a marathon against Keys, which was, I'd say, expected. I think we all expected it to be relatively close. Keys, we know, was in a pretty decent form in the event so far. She had the marathon comeback win against Kenin a couple rounds ago, but for the most part, she's been in good form. Also top 10 in the world. She won in the Australian Open. She won the title, so we know that she was in good form. Did have a nice win against Baptiste the round prior. Point is, though, Keys was in pretty good form, and she won the first set in a very competitive breaker, 8-6. Goff, though, came back and won. That was the first set that she dropped in the entire event. Came back and won 6-4, 6-1. The issue for Goff is still the same. The first serve and the second serve are still problematic. She had 10 double faults, but still found a way to win the match, even though she only won 34% of her second serve points. But Keys gave it a good run, kind of just ran out of gas at the end, and Goff buried her in the final set. But definitely a fun match nonetheless. Then you move on to the other match, which was the shocker of the round. You had the 3 favorites who won the first 3 matches, but then you had Armageddon in the final match because Andreeva, who's number 6 in the world, played against Boysen. Boysen ranked 361 in the world. The French Cinderella, run continues, as you ended up seeing Boysen win in straight sets against Andreeva at around plus 550. Now, Boysen was in a pretty serious amount of recovery time about a year ago because she had a pretty bad knee injury, came back, and you know what? Good for her. Made it all the way to the semis. She's taking on Goff now in the semis for a chance to maybe make it to a final. Either way, though, Boysen was definitely not expected to win the match. She was able to survive a very difficult hour and 21st set. In fact, you're looking at Andreeva, who was actually serving it out for the first set, and she actually ended up having a set point in the 4-5 return game. But you ended up seeing Boysen fight it off, get the break. Then she fought off, I should say Andreeva fought off a couple of set points from Boysen. She had another set point in the breaker, and then Boysen fought that off and ended up winning the first set. So Andreeva did have 2 separate set points in the first set, and she was serving it out for the first set. Choked away those chances, and then she went up 3-0 immediately in the second set, and you figured, okay, Boysen maybe is hitting a wall. Andreeva might come back here. And then she completely fell apart. She lost the final 6 games of the entire match. She was up 3-0, then lost 6-3. So Boysen not only won as a plus 550 underdog, but she was able to win in straight sets, which was a massive payout. Good for her. A nice job by, once again, the French wild card to use the crowd to her advantage. Did the crowd go overboard? Maybe a bit, but that's kind of expected with the crowds we've been seeing so far in the event. Andreeva, though, is still very young, clearly unraveled. I'd say similar to the way that Schneider unraveled in that match against Paolini in Italy a week or two ago. It just felt like the crowd atmosphere was getting to her. Andreeva unraveled, and you saw Boysen capitalize as she was able to get the job done there in straight sets. So once again, pretty interesting matches that we're going to have on Thursday for the French Open semis on the women's side. You have a couple of expected players here and one Cinderella, which is pretty fun. Before the actual recap of the quarter picks that we had for the Women's French Open, Sabalenka minus 140 and Zhang plus 500. Sabalenka did win the first quarter. That's a win. Second quarter, we had Swiatek at plus 115, Paolini at plus 390, and a little flyer there on Rybakina 10-1. Swiatek got there at plus 115, so nice win there too. Third quarter picked up a loss, though. We had Andreeva minus 110, Mukova at 12-1, and Jabeur 22-1. Don't really have any regrets there. We did pick Andreeva, but we did think that the quarter was the most open out of all the 4 quarters, and we were right. However, Boysen was on nobody's card. Nobody could have seen that coming, but we did pick a couple of longer shots who I thought could potentially dethrone Andreeva. That did not work out. Fourth quarter, we had Goff by herself at minus 120, so that was a nice win there. For the outrights, though, to win the event, we have no Sabalenka and we have no Boyson, obviously. But we did lose Zhang at 21-1. We do have Swiatek at 4-1 and Goff at 5-1. Overall, a good episode for us for the outrights on the women's side. Hopefully, Swiatek or Goff win the event to wrap a bow on all of the outrights that we have. We didn't pick Sabalenka, though. We thought the odds were too short. We'll see how that goes. But she has to beat Swiatek and most likely Goff in the final, which is not that easy. So we'll see how that goes. But once again, a pretty good episode for us. If you divide the units properly, you should be up for the actual outrights in the women's side for the event. Anyway, I said before, not going to talk about the men's matches because we're going to save that for the next episode. But point is, that's going to wrap it up for the recap of the quarterfinal matches. Time to move on to the semifinal matches taking place on Thursday. For that, the reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Edge Boost, because they are the first ever bank account for bettors, ensuring that all your gambling transactions are approved. Usage fees and no minimums. Cash rewards as well. 100% approval. Rather than pod sound today, Edge Boost. Pepper code SGPN. And when you do sign up this week, you'll get a free Rest for Terrorists t-shirt. Go to sportscampus.com/refs to claim your free shirt. We're also brought to you by Fantasy, because they're going along for the NBA Finals with their extender bonus. Hop in game one, and the longer the series goes, the bigger the bonus gets. Sign up, though, for your new account with the promo code SGPN. You get a special pick and a first-time visit offer up to 1K in bonus cash. As a promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by NYR Bets, because the Belmont Stakes Saratoga is happening, and you can bet on it with NYR Bets. Sign up today using the promo code SGPN25 to get a $5 deposit. $25 free bet plus a $200 deposit match bonus. Whether you're a seasoned bettor or just getting started, NYR Bets can help you make the jump into the action more easily. The exclusive offer is just for the Belmont Stakes, so don't wait. Join now. Claim your free $25 Belmont bet today at nyrbets.com/SGPN25. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the women's matches in the quarters. Time to move on into the preview of the matches taking place on Thursday. Starting off with the first match on the card, probably the match of the event so far on the women's side, because you do have Sabalenka against Swiatek. Now, the times of the matches have not been confirmed yet. In theory, they might be putting this match as the later match, but you have a French home crowd, I'd say, favorite here in the card as well. It would not shock me if they put Boyson in the late match slate because of the, I'd say, just improbability of her run and the fact that they do have a home country player to support. It would not shock me if this actually was the first match of the card, so I'm going to cover it first. Sabalenka against Swiatek. Now, for this one, you have Sabalenka as the favorite, about -140. You have Swiatek at +120. For the spread, -1.5 for Sabalenka, +1.5 for Swiatek. The over/under in games at 22.5. You can't find 21.5, though, at a pretty juiced over at -140, but you can take that if you want to. For the set spread, you have Sabalenka -1.5 sets at +180. You have Swiatek Swiatek -1.5 sets at +254. For the over 2.5 sets, I see +125. Team totals, I see 12.5. The over is +110 for Sabalenka. I see 12 for Swiatek. You can find 12.5s too if you shop around if you want to go for the plus money, but I do see a 12 at -130. The under on that is +110. The under for Sabalenka, 12.5, is a -130. Now, for that head history, they faced off many times before, and you have seen a pretty balanced head-to-head. Swiatek is currently up 6-4, but they have faced off multiple times on clay, and Swiatek has been very good against her on clay. Beat her in Rome last year in straight sets, beat her in Madrid last year, final set tie break, but it was a 3-setter, and she won in Madrid there. So you saw Swiatek win both clay meetings last year, faced off the year prior, though, in Madrid. Sabalenka did win that one in 3, faced off in Stuttgart, and you saw Swiatek win that one in straight sets, and they faced off in Rome 2022, and you ended up seeing Swiatek win that one in straight sets. In Stuttgart, Swiatek won that one also in straight sets. So if you're doing the math, with the clay-only meetings, it's been very, very lopsided in favor of Swiatek. Now, we know that her form has not been as good as previous years, but the point is Swiatek, we know, is one of the best clay players of all time on the women's side, and the fact that she's a dog feels a bit disrespectful, but I understand it because Sabalenka is the number one player in the world. They're going to price her accordingly. Now, for the head-to-head, once again on clay, Swiatek is currently 2-0. Sorry, trying to pull it up. 3-0, 3-1, 4-1. 5-1. So Swiatek is 5-1 in these six clay meetings. So in theory, the plus money does feel pretty intriguing. Now for the path of both players here, you have Sabalenka, who has not dropped a set yet. A couple of close sets though, at a 7-5 against Anisimova and at a 7-6 against Zhang. But besides that, has been coasting, has won every set here. Now as for Swiatek, she's had a tougher road as she dropped a set to Rybakina, won the final set 7-5, and then won a 7-5 in the final set against Svitolina, but she's only dropped one set into the event. So the question is, do I think there's value on Sabalenka at minus 140? The answer is no. I think there's no value on Sabalenka at all at minus 140. If she wins, she probably does cover the games, but in reality, I think that price is very steep. We know Swiatek, who's 5-1 in the head-to-head on clay, is a great clay player, and I do think that Sabalenka's firepower will be on display. However, we know that in the historical meetings, Swiatek's consistency and her overall movement has been able to force enough errors from Sabalenka to win these matches. And the question is, can Sabalenka keep the controlled aggression? Can she hit her spots and use firepower, or will she go for broke and punt away a bunch of free points? It's why she lost to Zhang a couple of weeks ago. It might happen again here. We'll see. I get why Sabalenka is favored just based on the current form entering the event, but you're going up against an all-time great clay player who's won 4 French Open titles, 3 in a row. I gotta go with Swiatek. I just think the price is too big. I'd have Sabalenka at like minus 115. I think it's a borderline pick'em if I had to actually price it myself. I think that Swiatek at plus 120 has value, in my opinion. I think it'll be a close matchup. I don't mind the over in the match in general. I think it goes 3 sets. I see a very close battle no matter what. So I think it will be going the distance. So maybe if you want to go for a same game parlay on the team totals, you maybe have that as an option. If you want to go for the 12.5s on both, maybe you'll get a breaker in there, helps you out, and you get a marathon on your hands, which would not surprise me. But for the actual value itself, I don't mind the over in this one. I think that the over 2.5 sets its value too at around plus 125, plus 130. I see a close matchup. I think you will get at least one set with a 7-5 or 7-6. I think you'll see one set that might determine the entire match, but I can see one set going very long, which would definitely help out the over and help out the team totals. So for this one, I will go with the over, and I'm going to go with the dog here. I just don't see much value at minus 140. I think that Swiatek's too good on clay to be this disrespected, according to price. And Swiatek, if she loses, I think she'll go down swinging. I don't want the team total over for her as well. But for the matchup itself, 5-1 on clay head-to-head, good enough for me at plus money. I'll stick with my pre-tournament, I'd say, belief, which is that Swiatek would win a head-to-head matchup against Sabalenka, and it's why I picked her to win the event. Give me Swiatek to get the job done here at plus money in this one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have a massive favorite in Goff taking on Boysen. Goff is at minus 500. You have Boysen at plus 380 or so. For the spread, you have minus 5.5 for Goff, plus 5.5 for Boysen, minus 120 though on the Boysen side. The over-unders at either 20.5 or 19.5 at minus 135 on the over. For the set spread, you have Goff in straight sets at minus 160. Boysen to win a set is plus 124. The over 2.5 sets is plus 181. Now, for the head-to-head, never faced off before, so can't use it. Now, Boysen, though, has had a very weird run because she had a pretty interesting collection of marathons. She had a 3-setter against Mertens in the first round, beat Kalinina in the second round in straight sets, beat Jacquemot in 3, beat Pegula in 3, and beat Andreeva in straight sets. So she went from facing off against a decent opponent to 2 complete unknowns, then having very nice wins against top 10 players back-to-back. So good for her off the serious knee injury. The forehand's been great. The crowd support's been great. And it's created a very difficult environment for opponents to beat her because of the crowd hyping her up after every point. Now, Goff, we know, is a former French Open finalist. We picked her to win the event, so we do have her making a deep run, and we picked her to win the quarter by herself at minus 120, which did work out. But going through the path here, did not drop a set in 4 straight, beating Gadecki in straight sets, beat Valentova in straight sets, beat Puskova in straight sets with a breaker, though, beat Alexandrova with a bagel and a 7-5, and then beat Keys, dropping the first set in a breaker, winning the final 2 sets 6-4, 6-1. So not the toughest path for Goff. It's why we took her by herself. We thought the path would be pretty easy. Keys was difficult, but she was able to get by and kind of coasted at the end in 3 sets. So the question is, will Gauff short circuit under the pressure of the French Open crowd, or will we end up seeing the Cinderella run end for Boysen as she loses to a solid clay player in Gauff? Now, for this one, I think for the price itself, I don't think that minus 500 is, in my opinion, fair. I think Gauff's more vulnerable than that. I think that Boysen is still being priced like she is this wild card no name, when I think she's earned the respect, beating Andreeva and beating Pegula. I know Pegula's not that great on clay, but still nice wins in back-to-back matches against top 10 opponents. And of course, the crowd's been great. I think the price is kind of steep for Gauff, whose serve can betray her, I'd say constantly. I do think that I'd have this at like minus 350 for me for Gauff. She should be a decent favorite. I think that 500's a little bit expensive. So based on that, in theory, there's value in Boysen. Am I picking her to win? No. Am I picking her to cover the 5.5? I think I'll say yes on this. 5.5's a lot. I think that Gauff's serve can easily let her down, and I do think that Gauff can easily double fault the breakaway. She had 10 double faults against Keys. We know the serve's always a problem, and she will have multiple matches in a tournament where she double faults 10 plus times. The crowd, who's going to be making noise in between first and second serves, might psych her out even more. Her double fault prop in this match for Gauff is over under 7.5 double faults on Bet365. So based on that, I think that you'll see Boysen break a couple times, which would help her chances of actually covering the spread. Might go 3 sets. It would not shock me if Gauff ended up fumbling a set and then won in 3. I'm not going to pick Boysen to win. However, if she did win, I would be less surprised than most people. But 5.5 games is a lot, in my opinion. I will take the plus 5.5 for Boysen. Think Gauff wins. Maybe there's a breaker in there. Maybe there's a close set. But I can see a potential like 6-4, 6-3. I think that's realistic. I think that's a pretty decent outcome. And Boysen still covers with that being the case. But Gauff has had a couple of competitive sets. She has had 3 straight matches with a 7-5 or a 7-6. So team total can be on the cards here for Gauff. You have seen Boysen, though, have a breaker against Andreeva. Previous 2 matches against Pegula and Giacomotti did both go to a 3rd set. So maybe you get a marathon here. Maybe the over is worth looking at, but I do think Gauff will win. I think that she's a bit too solid when it comes to the baseline game, and I do think that, unlike Andreeva, I think she'll be able to handle the atmosphere a bit more, because we know that she's a former Grand Slam champion. She's been here in the final before in the French Open. I think she'll do a better job than Andreeva when it comes to the crowd atmosphere, but I do think Boysen will not go quietly. I think she might win a set, actually. I don't mind potentially the over 2.5 sets at plus 180. I think there's some value if you want to go for a long shot flyer for this one. But give me Boysen plus the games. I will pick Gauff to win, not cover. And I do think that's a pretty nice balance of Boysen being competitive while also not getting the job done in the end. Think we end up getting Gauff in the final if I had to go with my pre-tournament prediction, which I stuck with as I picked her to win the event. So give me Gauff to make it to the final, but I am going to pick Boysen to make it tough and to maybe win a set out of it. So I'll go with Gauff I'll go with 3 for this one. Give me Gauff in 3. Forgot to mention, by the way, give me Swiatek in 3. That's going to be my predictions for the women's semifinal match in the French Open, taking place on Thursday. Checking the comment section quickly. I see Leonard stopping by. What's up, Leonard? CapQuest can't believe that Mira choked it away. I'm not as surprised because I did say pre-tournament I thought Andreeva was the weakest out of the 4 favorites in their quarter. Andreeva, at the end of the day, is a solid player, and we know that she won a 1,000 title earlier this year. However, the lack of firepower is still concerning, and the fact that she really can't hit the ball past her opponents is definitely problematic. And if you run into a player with a good forehand like Boysen, who can change the overall, I'd say, flow of the match with how quickly she can end points and be the aggressor in points, you can find Andreeva on the back foot a lot, which can leave her vulnerable to upsets. And I do think that Boysen did a good job of taking control of points in the second set, especially during that 6-0 run after she fell behind 3-0. Andreeva, though, I think is a solid player. I do think she needs to work on the firepower a bit more to become a little bit more aggressive offensively. She's too passive in some points, which I do think comes back to bite her. So I'm not as shocked. Maybe the method of her falling apart, 3-0, is why you're so surprised by it. But I think Andreeva losing is not as big of a shock as it might appear. It's mainly based on the Boysen ranking in the 360s. But I'm also lower on Andreeva than most people. I think Andreeva is a very good player, but the lack of firepower is concerning. And I do think she needs to address it by working on that with her coaches. And hopefully she does that moving forward. I also see Matt stopping by, thanking me for roasting the Dub Club people. Yeah, once again, you have a lot of scammers on the internet, and my picks are free. So I'm just trying to raise awareness that just because you see a bunch of posts for people winning, I'll put quotes around winning because Photoshop's a big deal on social media. Be careful out there. You have a lot of people that are trying to trick the public into thinking that they are these gambling gods, and they're not. They lose money and they scam people into paying for the Dub Club membership. Be careful out there. Keep that in mind. Once again, my picks are free, so you can find all my picks on Twitter, on SGPN, etc. But a reminder there for the Dub Club people, I will roast anybody that charges for picks that is also really bad at giving out picks and then hides it in the process. So keep that in mind. Be careful on social media. A lot of, I'll use the term fake gamblers out there who are trying to scheme and scam the public into giving them money. So be careful out there if you are trying to pay for picks. A reminder, though, that you can find all of the SGPN picks for free on the SGPN app and all the podcasts on YouTube, etc. Pause, I see Noah stopping by, talking about how he has money on Carlos to win the French Open. I'll tell you what, he looked really good. I'll save the men's recap once again for the next episode, but damn, Paul got his ass kicked. That's all I'll say, and I'm happy you do enjoy the show, Noah. Anyway, time to move on into the actual lock and dog plays for the women's semifinals. Before we get into that, though, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is the Circa Ultimate Fantasy Bowl giveaway, because Circa Resort and Casino, Las Vegas, is giving away the Ultimate Fantasy Bowl experience for a 12-person league to draft in Vegas and be sure to VIP for your stay. You also get a limo ride from the airport, a 5K tab for stadium swim if you want to get some drinks, and hotel stay for you and your 11 league mates. You can also get 15% off everything in the Circa properties, 15% of everything with promo code SGP15. So check that out as well. Enter the contest for free at sportscam.com/circa. That's sportscam.com/CIRCA. We're also brought to you by Rhythm because you've heard us talk about Rhythm before. They also just dropped a game-changing feature called Power Trends, where they are AI-detected patterns where Rhythm's models have consistently won, and they have a high ROI. And a reminder, you can also check out the Power Trends every day. They're uploaded daily and updated every day. Exclusive to Rhythm. No touts, no noise, just clean data-backed picks. Download the Rhythm app, check out Power Trends, and start betting smarter, because you know that we'll be doing so. Also, try it for free for a week by using the 7-day free trial. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RATHMM. We're also brought to you by MyBookie, because MyBookie.ag is a place for every sport. They have the playoffs. They have the NHL playoffs. They have tennis. They have UFC. They have baseball. You name it. They're available to no location as well. Use crypto for easy deposits and fast payouts. When you sign up for your new account, though, use the promo code SGPN. They get a $100,000 match up to 1K. Terms and conditions to MyBookie.ag. Promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the women's matches taking place on Thursday. Time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go with the first matchup between Sabalenka and Swiatek. Give me Swiatek team total over 12 at -130. If Swiatek wins the match, you automatically win or push. Keep that in mind. But I like the whole number team total here. You're looking at Swiatek being an all-time great clay player. She's won the title here 4 times. She also is one of the best clay players of all time. Think that it's a very disrespectful line, in my opinion. I get that Sabalenka is number 1 in the world, but Swiatek is really good in the head-to-head. She has won at least 12 games in all 6 career head-to-head clay meetings. So whether she wins comfortably in straight sets or even loses in a competitive 3, she finds a way to 12 always. And I do think Swiatek, if she wins at least 1 set, you're in a good spot to cash this team total. Swiatek, though, can in theory lose the match if it's competitive and still go over this number. I see it being close, though. We have seen Swiatek go to a couple of longer sets recently. She did have a 7-5 against Svitolina, had a 7-5 against Rybakina, and a 7-5 against Christian. So she has had a 7-5 in 3 straight matches. For Sabalenka, though, she's had a 7-5 or 7-6 in 2 straight matches. I can see one marathon set, which might help out the team total either way. And if Swiatek wins the set, she's in great shape. Before the value, give me the 4-time French Open champion, team total over 12 at -130 as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go to the other matchup between Boyson and Goff. Give me the Goff team total over 12.5 games here at +104. There's been a 7-5 or 7-6 set in 3 straight Goff matches. So even though she's been winning while dropping minimal sets, she has had a couple of competitive sets recently. And I can't see that happening again here against Boyson. She had a 7-6 against Keys, a 7-5 against Alexandrova, and a 7-6 against Buskova. So based on the recent form, Goff's been winning, but still going over this team total, which makes me think this line is very, I'd say, generous at plus money. Plus, Boyson has had a couple of marathon matches recently. 2 of her last 3 opponents have gone over this team total as well, even though those opponents obviously lost the match to Boyson. She had a 7-6, 6-3 against Andreeva, so a tiebreaker in there. She beat Pegula, but Pegula ended up winning 14 games, and she beat Giacomo, who ended up having 14 games as well. So despite winning, she's had a couple of close calls, and the fact is, I think that Goff can get there in a straight set win. I like the idea of a marathon set, or even it going 3 sets, couple of paths to get there, but I do think that with the crowd going against Goff, rooting for the French player, I think that the double faulting could be a concern. Her double faulting prop again is at 7.5. So Goff might punt away a couple of service games, might get a marathon set, maybe she loses a set. I think she'll win, but I do think 12.5 games of plus money is a good deal for a minus 500 favorite. I'll take that as my dog for the show. So once again, I'm going to go with some team totals for the lock and dog. Give me Sviatek team total over 12 at minus 130. For the dog, I'm going to go with Goff team total over 12.5 at plus 104. It's going to wrap it up for the show. I'll be back once again tomorrow to get into the men's preview for the semis. Until next time, I'm on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Good luck to all of you and all of your bets.